We're learning new and very disturbing information about the background of the ICE officer who allegedly shot and killed a Colombian man in Maine, and it is raising very serious questions about ICE's rush to recruit and hire officers. According to the Associated Press, Officer David Bruilet's relatives describe him as having, quote, a history of terrifying and violent behavior. The AP also reviewed hundreds of family court records detailing, quote, years of allegations of physical and verbal abuse raised by his second ex-wife on behalf of herself and her daughters. His ex-wife even detailed how last year he told her he was hired by ICE. She said that because of his long history of psychiatric issues, she thought he was having a mental health episode. She didn't even believe him. That is until this week when she saw videos of the moments around the shooting. Bruilet did not respond to the AP's request for comment. Democratic lawmakers are now demanding answers from Homeland Security about how it vets and it trains its immigration officers. ICE has been on this rapid fire hiring spree, fueled in part by billions of dollars in grants from Congress. In June, President Trump signed a reconciliation bill. It poured nearly $70 billion into ICE and to the Border Patrol. You heard me right. $70 billion. See that big old B there? DHS has until September 2029 to spend it, and more than half of it is earmarked for ICE. Check out where the bulk of it goes. $38 billion for ICE to hire and pay and train and equip officers, including expanding partnerships with local police for immigration enforcement. $26 billion for Border Patrol hiring. Surveillance, enforcement, essentially a blank check of $5 billion just for general funds as well. The legislation doesn't include key guardrails either, or accountability reforms like mandatory body cameras, which they continue to say are coming, judicial warrant requirements, or restrictions on detaining pregnant women. Let me put this into perspective. A decade ago, ICE's entire annual budget was less than $6 billion. Today, it is the highest funded federal law enforcement agency, period, full stop. And do not forget, DHS already received a massive windfall under Trump's so-called one big beautiful bill. They haven't even come close to using that money. According to the most recent data, ICE and CBP had a combined $118 billion that went unspent in April 2026. Virtually unlimited budget with limited oversight. That is exactly what Donald Trump promised. This is me at the Republican National Convention in 2024, right after the president got his third presidential nomination. Watch.
He's talking about removing more than 10 million people from this country who have been here, many of them since they were little children, contribute to this society, contribute to this economy, live in all of our neighborhoods and communities. And now we're throwing balloons around as if this is a party.
And now here we are. 2 people shot and killed by ICE in just 1 week. A family and a community is mourning the latest victim, Joan Sebastian Duran Guerrero. Guerrero, a Colombian national with U.S. work authorization, was shot multiple times inside his vehicle in Biddeford, Maine on Monday. He was 25 years old, a husband and a father to his 3-year-old girl. And DHS is once again defending its use of lethal force. Here's what they say, quote, Guerrero attempted to flee the scene and that the agent, quote, feared for public safety. Videos taken after the shooting show officers handcuffing what appears to be Guerrero's lifeless body. And we're supposed to believe that this is about public safety. Here's Guerrero's partner on Thursday.
Se suponía que ese lunes en la tarde sería día de estar con papá, pero nunca llegó. Ahora mi hija pregunta por papá y no tengo la fuerza para decirle que papá no vendrá, que ya no lo podrá abrazar ni decirle, papi, te amo.
She can't hug him anymore or tell him, Papi, I love you. Joining me now is Congresswoman Shelley Pingree. Her district includes the location in Maine where Guerrero lived and was killed. Thank you so much for coming back to the show this weekend.
Sure. Thanks for having me. It's been an incredibly sad week in Maine.
It's unbelievable. It's both unbelievable and shocking that this happened, but also, unfortunately, not surprising that this happened after we talked exactly a week ago. And I want to start with the new reporting on the ICE officer who allegedly shot and killed Guerrero. I want to show you the officer's ex-wife. Her name is Ashley. Let's watch this.
And then he's like, well, I need you to lie about my character because this is how, this is what it comes down to is my character. I don't want you talking about any of the abuse in our relationship. I believe that this man was murdered. I believe that David's mental health played a part in what happened.
What does this tell you about how the Department of Homeland Security is vetting and recruiting its officers, Congresswoman?
Well, I mean, this is just a debacle of catastrophic proportions, and it's on all sides, shooting the wrong man in two different places in the same week, and then getting an insight into this officer as we have now, thanks to the courage of his ex-wife, and actually a second ex-wife has come forward, and the tales are horrendous. This is a person who didn't hold any jobs for very long, less than a year, most of them, while he has worked previously in law enforcement, and we have no idea whether he had sufficient training to be in that particular situation that he was in that day, but clearly had a record of violence, domestic violence, anger, just, a whole variety of issues. We know that ICE, with this ridiculously large amount of money that you were just delineating there, has been attempting to build up the force. I think their target was 12,000, paying big signing bonuses, just hauling in a huge net and then bragging that people were only trained 47 days, 47, of course, the choice of the president. But this is what happens when you put all of these horrendous factors together, their quotas, their untrained officers, their inability to use any kind of warrants to actually make sure they're tracking down the right person. Usually the right person shouldn't be detained either, but they end up shooting the wrong man. This poor man, and you saw the gut-wrenching, communications from his beautiful wife. He was pulling out of his driveway to go to work and shot only a few doors down from his house. So shortly after the shooting, as you said, they dragged his dead body out onto the street, and his wife and 3-year-old daughter were right there, as was the whole neighborhood. This is a neighborhood that was terrorized and in shock.
I was going to say, Congresswoman, that this has come to your doorstep, both with Olivia Andre and now this horrible killing that has happened in your district. But you've been at this for a very long time, and I met you, as I mentioned last weekend, for the first time down at the Dilley Detention Center in South Texas, because you have been pushing for reforms. And the Department of Homeland Security claimed that officers involved here were not wearing body cameras. But there are 4 ICE officials who spoke to The Intercept to say the officers were equipped with devices that were capable of recording video, but the camera functionality was disabled. When you hear that, what does that mean to you?
It's crazy. It's just unthinkable. We sent a lengthy letter to Secretary Mullen yesterday after a phone call that I'd had with him the day before, delineating many of these things to ask him to tell us the real reasons why they didn't have body cameras. On the phone, he said to me there was a back order. You Democrats shut down the government. And we haven't been able to get them. That's just bullshit. You can call Amazon and get something shipped to you the next day. How is it that this group of untrained officers didn't have it? And then, as you heard, there was going to be a pause on these vehicle stops, which are horrendous anyway, and they only do them because they don't have to get an actual judicial warrant to go into somebody's home. So these are easier for them to make the pickups. But the fact is, they should have had those cameras turned on. I think there's some flimsy excuse about the company, the contract, whatever. It's just an agency. I'm one of the people who says abolish it because they can't do anything right, and they are doing horrendous damage. And it's horrific that they took this life, but it also means, and I was in Biddeford last night at a vigil, it also means that we're hearing from people who say their neighbors won't leave their homes, kids don't want to go to school. I talked to someone who worked at a grocery store who said half of the employees hadn't come in this week. Wow. Who dares go out of their house? It used to be you had to be afraid to be detained. Now you have to be afraid to be shot. In little tiny Biddeford, Maine, that doesn't have a high crime rate, that has a huge history of immigration and immigrants in that community, and is very, very welcoming.
It was very heartening, I have to say, to see members of your community come out in support of this family in the wake of this tragedy. Before you go, obviously there's an election coming up, and Susan Collins, the senator in Maine, the Republican senator who's up for re-election, she was a deciding vote to approve that additional $70 billion in all of that federal funding for ICE. What are your words for Senator Collins, who voted for all of this money?
Well, look, I think this is going to be a huge issue in this election cycle. As you know, we're getting ready to choose a new candidate in that race, and we'll have somebody by next week. But I think that she has a lot to answer for here, for explaining for ICE. And just because I'm also a member of the House, I want all Republicans to take responsibility for this. You know, it's going to be a big issue in her campaign and in every Republican's campaign, because they're feeling the same way, you know, down on the border of Texas. They're asking the same questions. And none of them have their hands clean on this. They all voted both for the big ugly bill. Then they asked for more money in appropriations, as you were mentioning. They refused to put any constraints on ICE. And they put people in charge of these entities. The Senate approves them, who really aren't competent to run the complex organizations that they do, with more money than you could ever imagine, building new detention centers. And the worst thing is they're operating under these ideas of Stephen Miller, that basically anybody should be picked up, locked up in detention, and, you know, let them see if they can get out. But it's almost impossible sometimes to get out of the detention center, even if you're legally here, unless you can bond yourself out, get a lawyer. You know how awful it is. And these places are not fit for human beings.
To get this habeas petition as well now, that's so well documented in this new New Yorker reporting we were talking about earlier. I wish all congresspeople would do what you have done, Congresswoman, go down to the border, see it for themselves. And unfortunately, now you're seeing it in your own home district. Democratic Congresswoman Shelley Pingree of Maine, we'll have you back soon. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Appreciate your talk.